Traders, what's happening? Welcome back to the weekly Forex Outlook and Reviews. I just want to say that I'm very sorry I haven't uploaded any content recently, but the last 7 to 10 trading days or so, I really needed just to focus on my own personal trading. You probably realized the market's been a little bit rough, but towards the end they started to pick up a bit. But for me, it was just very important that I focused on that and creating content and doing the weekly Forex Outlook and Reviews was just a little bit tough at the time. But just want to let you know I am back. I have created already for you all some amazing content next week for you to look out for. So make sure you support the channel, please. Like, subscribe, turn on notifications, just to obviously show that you appreciate the content, and that just gives me some encouragement to continue doing what I'm doing. So I'm going to go over the markets this week. We're going to be taking a look at 11 pairs as usual. Just remember, the analysis is of my own opinion. These are not signals. And also remember, this analysis usually stands for around 24 to 48 hours because the market sentiments are constantly changing. And as we all know, all it takes is a tweet or for a boat to get stuck somewhere. Okay, so let's take a look at these pairs. As I've gone through this, I have found it a little bit difficult to gauge the market sentiment, which happens from time to time, but we'll do our very best to understand what's happening. So the first thing that I'll identify here on pound USD is that there's a lot of bearish structure that's starting to form. What helps me to identify that is breaks of structural lows. So around the 37.96 area, you can see we had a low that wasn't broken for quite some time. We finally smashed through that. Now, the first things that I think of when we start to break structural lows is the dollar is strengthening, especially pound USD. The dollar is strengthening. And for that reason, I believe the market sentiment is shifting from the previous uptrend and now starting to shift to the downside. Now, I've had this in the back of my mind for quite some time now, since we put in this high and we failed to break above it around 41.76. We started to take out the previous higher low at 40.96, and then we started to put in lower highs and lower lows. Now, what's very important to identify here is that at every attempt, the market failed to make a new high around this level here, 39.86, and we've tapped into it after being created 3 times. The final tap was the first time that the momentum actually kicked in and shifted, and now what I expect the market to do is just continue down next week. Now, if I have in the back of my mind dollar strength, that will help me to continue to analyze the markets and understand where we're at in terms of the market sentiment and currency strength. And the 2 plans of actions that I will be looking for next week will be a retest around 38.68. This is a previous lower high that put in the current low as part of this new form downtrend that's making lower lows and lower highs. So a nice retest of this level and a continuation down, forming a double top pattern. Now, if the markets don't come back to this key level, then I'll be looking for price to break some of these structural lows here around 36.83. And if we do, then we have some really nice targets to the downside to around 35.84. And as you could probably see here, the range back to the downside is around 87 pips. Now, the level that I've chosen is the last major low from this structure that actually formed this trend to the upside. So I think that's a reasonable target to look to see price to get to, if that made sense. But I don't think at the moment I'll be looking for buys. Right now, I would much prefer the market to continue to push down so that I know that the dollar is definitely a lot stronger next week, and the break below this level will be a very important factor in making a decision whether I'm going to sell this. In terms of buying opportunities, I mean, look, if the market does break above 38.68, I don't want to explore too many options here because I want to narrow it down to a plan. But if it does break above, then there's a very high chance that we're going to continue up. The last lower high should support structure, sell bias, and once a lower high or a high low is broken, then that is the first signs of potential reversals. So that's my analysis on pound USD. Next pair we'll take a look at is pound JPY. Now, I'm struggling here. What I do identify from pound USD is that the pound is weakening. Now, the thing is, we can see that the uptrend has now also started to deplete around this 152.42 level. We have an area in the market where price failed to make new highs for quite some time. And then you'll start to see here, price started to break structural higher lows. Now, this is definitely a sign. You can either put it here or here. It doesn't matter. It's an area. But this is definitely a sign of bearish sentiment. Now, once we've broken below this level, we form a lower low. And now we can see the correction of this movement. So what's important for me next week to identify what is happening is to see if price comes back to this major structure for a retest. And if we fail to break it, then we can start looking for possible sells on this structure. Now, I'd like to see price come back to this level to tap into 152.48, fail to break above it, then start to see the shift in bearish sentiment, and then to see price start to put in lower highs to then anticipate what could be the start to a new downtrend, which will be a structural high, structural low, lower high, then to anticipate the lower low. Now, if this doesn't happen, then I think the only other option that I have here is just to wait patiently for price to create new structure within this range, or the most easiest or the most secure plan, in my opinion, is to see price break 148.76. A break below this level will add confluence to the previous structure that formed, which was a failure to break highs. Then a lower high that may be formed within this structure, starting to initiate bearish sentiment, and then a break below a major key level in the market, which is the structural low, and a retest, and then potential continuations to the downside. I'm not sure that I will be trading pound JPY from a higher time frame perspective next week, but I definitely could use it to understand whether our analysis on pound USD is correct and whether we can support selling the pound with weakness that we may gather from pound JPY. I know that's not concrete analysis, but I think this chart itself will give us a broader view of what the market sentiment is, as opposed to a pair that will form enough structure next week to trade it and get an idea of where it's going. Let's see how this one plays out. Next pair we'll take a look at is Euro Yen. Now, I also do believe that the sentiment of this structure is changing as well, going from bullish to now bearish. Same principles here. Price is failing to make new highs around 130.69. We have a lower high that's been formed. Now we have price coming back into a major key level in the market here, which created the higher low and the last high here at 128.34. Now, for me to feel comfortable about trading this pair, I'd like to see price come back to retest this structure, and if we do, then I can get an idea of a pattern that's very common to all of us, which is a double top, that the sentiment is more likely to continue down than up, and then look to target some of these lows here at 128.34. Now, if price does break above it, I mean, it's not wrong to say that buys couldn't be on the cards here, because as our last lower high that made the low, if price breaks above it, then there's definitely a high chance that price will continue up. If price doesn't come back to this retest level and we start to play around within this range where there's a lot of traffic to the left and no evidence of where buyers or sellers could be sitting, then you just want to be waiting patiently for price to break some of these structural lows here around 128.34. Look for your retest, and then you can target some of the major lows to the left, which will be around 127.37. Now, just so that you know, again, this pair is not creating the cleanest of structures, so you might just want to use this to identify whether the euro is strong, whether the yen is strengthening to help your analysis on pound JPY, and then just really go from there. But that's my analysis on euro JPY. The next pair we'll take a look at is USD CAD. Now, we're starting to see strength with the dollar versus the pound and across the board. We can see that the overall structure of this market is now changing from being bearish since the start of this month to now turning bullish. We have evidence here of price breaking above structural highs, forming higher lows and higher highs. And I think personally, now that we're consolidating and moving sideways, and we have gathered, I would say, marginal evidence based on pound USD that the dollar is strengthening, my first plan of action would be to see price break above 26.29. If we break above this level, I will see this as new behavior and new form structure. I wouldn't be too worried about the information to the left. I believe that we'll be able to get back to some of these target highs. But if we do break above, then I'll be more than happy to take buys on this pair. Now, because of the consolidation and the fact that we are tapping into a previous consolidation, which could find itself failing to break above or get back into some of these areas, and we break below, then I would also be very happy to sell. Now, I have put my target sells very low here. I think that I would have to correct this and put it at the level where the last lower high was broken to form the retest before the continuation. I think this is reasonable to say because, to be honest with you, it still can come back to the last lower high, which is this level here, before then continuing back to the upside. But just to clarify this, I do believe that the dollar is strengthening, meaning that I would focus more on buys on this structure than I would sells, because it's always best to trade with the trend than it is to trade against it. And also it's better that we trade with the market sentiment. So that's my analysis on USD CAD. Next pair we'll take a look at is USD JPY. Now, the structure of the market here has not created anything that attracts me to wanting to trade this pair. What I do identify is that there was a consolidation for quite some time. Price was failing to break above and below these structures here. And now that we've had a break above this structure, the only thing that I really want to take away from this, just to help me with my analysis across the board here, is that the dollar is strengthening. With that added confluence, it can help me to continue to identify potential sells on pound USD, potential buys on USD CAD, and well, I mean, if the structure starts to form and clear up a little bit here on USD JPY, potential buys on this pair. But I'll use this pair as a confluence as opposed to looking for trades next week, and this is my analysis on USD JPY. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro New Zealand dollar. Now, to be brutally honest with you, if you look at the overall structure of this market, we had a really strong impulse move to the upside here. Now, there was nothing to show evidence of New Zealand dollar strength or Aussie dollar strength for at least the last 2 weeks. But now we're starting to see a really strong pullback here. And the question is, are we reversing, or is this just a pullback for a continuation? If we have a look at Euro JPY, we can clearly see that the euro has started to weaken. We can start to see lower lows and lower highs being formed on this pair, meaning that there is enough evidence to support, at least until we get some confirmation here, that the dollar may be weakening. That means that I see 69.87 as a retest level for potential sells on this market. Now, if you want to know where I would look for targets once the structure starts to clear, I think it will be back at this retest level where the consolidation formed. These areas in the market are very important because once the consolidation is broken, price usually does like to come back to retest it before then deciding whether it's going to continue down to get through this traffic or retest this level before continuing up. I think my first plan of action is to look for potential retests around this level for targets back down to some of these lows. And then if structure starts to form within this range, then we'll go from there next week. As of now, we have nothing to work with. But we are starting to see euro weakness. And because we have nothing to support New Zealand dollar strength, it could indicate that we might be right here, especially with the way the structure is forming on Euro JPY. Next pair we'll take a look at is Euro Aussie dollar. This just continues to add a lot of confluence on our analysis based on Euro JPY and Euro New Zealand dollar. We can see that there's been a real sign of weakness with the euro here. We've had real strong structure rallying to the downside or tanking to the downside on Euro JPY. Euro New Zealand dollar created a high, failed to break above it, and we've had real strong bearish momentum. And now we had a short-term trend here, creating higher highs and higher lows. The level that's important to me is 55.27, where price should, in theory, retest before continuing up to make a new high. Has failed. We've broken a higher low, which starts to signal to us potential reversal. So my first plan of action moving into next week will be to see, let's get this right, a retest of 55.27 for potential continuation sells down to 52.81. Now, I think this analysis is all we can work with at this moment in time. Of course, if structure starts to form within this range, then we'll continue to build on a plan. But as of now, I think plan A is the only plan we could be working with. But it is really interesting to see how the euro is playing out. And if it continues to weaken, then we're just continuing to add that confidence we need to have confidence in the potential trades we plan to take. Next pair we'll take a look at is Euro USD. Now, I'd like to say this. The dollar is showing signs of strength here versus the euro. We haven't seen anything substantial yet. So for me, I would like to see one or two things happen based on the fact that I have identified potential euro weakness. I would like to see continuation sells next week. A retest of 1839 I think would be the best plan of action for me, and then looking for potential targets back down to 1762. If the euro continues to weaken the way we're seeing it weaken at the moment, then I think we may not even get back to this retest level, and we will be looking for a break below 1762 for continuation sells. This chart or pair gives us a lot of evidence to support euro yen, euro New Zealand dollar, and euro Aussie dollar sentiment. But you just have to be very careful that you don't take away too much from this, because we know that the dollar is very strong. So with the other three pairs that we've just mentioned, take your time and wait for structure to form. Here on Euro USD, we have structure that has formed, but we want to see confirmation of that as a continuation next week. So look for those retests or break belows, and then let's see if we can get into some really nice sells on this pair. Next pair we'll take a look at is Aussie dollar USD. I believe this is just a pullback. Again, there's been no evidence to support why the Aussie dollar should be strong. The overall sentiment of the market has been a bit shaky since the start of the month. We haven't really had any real clear downtrends, but as you probably can see here, we have not made a new high since the start of this month, meaning that there is strong evidence to support that the Aussie dollar just has no momentum or no real strength in it to push this market up. And personally, I'm sticking with sells on this pair only. A retest of 77.04 would be fantastic as the last break and retest level in the market. If we don't get back there, then I'll be very happy to look for a break below some of these key levels here. Let's put in our price around 75.78. This was my analysis on Aussie dollar USD. Next pair we'll take a look at is New Zealand dollar USD. We already seen what is happening across the board here. US dollar is very strong, so I will patiently wait for a retest at 71.06 or a potential break below 69.46 for continuation sells. The market has pushed a lot, so I do suspect at least a 50% retracement before then continuing down. You can trade within this zone. There's not much traffic to the left here to cause you any problems, but waiting for price to come back to major key levels or breaking below key levels is a sure sign or very positive added confluence that the market could potentially continue in your direction. So try not to trade too much in the middle. Try and find those key levels or break belows and then take it from there. But that's my analysis on New Zealand dollar USD. Final pair we'll take a look at is gold. At the moment, we are just consolidating. Not much to say. Since the start of this month, gold was trending down. We now can see towards the latter part of the month, price is starting to move sideways. Be patient, be patient, be patient. Wait for a break below or above structure to start to identify the behavior. Support that with your structure patterns and processes, and then look to take a trade once things start to clear up. My humble opinion is that I believe this could continue down next week, but it's just my opinion, which means I could be totally wrong. But the reason I say that is because we're identifying dollar strength across the board. The overall structure of gold at the moment is actually creating lower lows and lower highs, so we do see the bears are in the market, but the question is, can they start to rally this market or make this market start pushing to the downside? I don't know yet, but we will see, and it'll be a very interesting last week to the month. So that's my analysis across the board, those 11 pairs there. Dollar definitely looks like it should be a winner next week, so hopefully keep our fingers crossed. We can get into some good trades. Euro showing signs of weakness, so just be very careful. We have some early signs supported by the yen, supported by New Zealand dollar and Aussie dollar there. So let's see what happens. We also have evidence of pound weakness. So let's see if the yen starts to strengthen and get some good sells there on pound JPY. And we also can back that up with the evidence of pound USD with pound weakness. So we kind of got an overview of the market sentiment and the behaviors and structures. Hopefully you can work with that next week, traders. But I just want to wish you all a fantastic Sunday. Enjoy the last 3 or 4 days of next week, 3 days, in fact, of next week. And just prepare yourself for the 4th month of the year. We still got a long way to go till the end of this year. And just make sure you stay focused. If you've enjoyed this, please smash that like button for me. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications. And until next time, continue to trust the process.